Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Senior Center Without Walls program. My name's Lori Stamen, and I operate the Seniors Resource Center in Metchosin. Today, we have Colleen Woodger with us from ICBC, and she's going to do a presentation on mature driving skills. But just before we begin, just a few housekeeping items that I'm recording this event, and we're going to be posting it on the Metchosin Seniors YouTube channel. And Colleen says it's fine if you want to ask questions for her during the presentation, and there certainly will be time after. And I think I'll just give a brief information about Colleen. She's the road safety and the road safety and community coordinator with ICBC. And she's giving a presentation today, as I said, on mature driving skills. And I'm going to turn the mic over to you, Colleen. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lori, and everybody for coming online here to learn a little bit more on road safety. Yeah, I'm Colleen Woodger. I've been with ICBC for 32 years. I got hired at like 5 years old, and I've been doing road safety since 2000. I started in Nanaimo doing road safety there for a couple of years, and then I came back. I'm born and raised island girl, and very passionate about the work I do. My territory is Chemainus and all the Southern Gulf Islands, so it's quite a large territory. And that's anything from car seats to new drivers to speed, impaired, alcohol, working with police, working with schools, working with municipalities. It's quite a great vast job, but it's one that I hold near and dear to my heart. So I really enjoy this particular presentation. I think it's great to, we want everyone to sort of drive safely for as long as they can and keep that independence. So this is exactly what we're trying to do with this today. So I am going to go through a number of slides, and I will be happy to field any questions if you have any. It might be hard for those on the phone who are mute, but there will be time at the end as well. So thank you very much. Let's get going. I'll try not to talk too quickly because I get really going sometimes. What we're going to cover today is what driving is like today. We're going to talk about self-assessment, self-assessing as a driver. We're going to talk about the enhanced road assessment. This is where we'll get into that is should you have to prove your driving abilities, and lots of tips and refresher rules of the road and ways to stay mobile. So that's sort of the topics we'll cover. Driving today, well, if you ever look back, I mean, I've been driving in Victoria for years. I even look back when I first started driving, 10 minutes to get across town. It's a half an hour now. The volume of traffic is massive, and I'm sure you experience that even out in those beautiful rural roads in Metchosin. There's a lot more vehicles on the road, a lot more distractions. People are very distracted. There's screens in people's vehicles. These smartphones have got people focusing on that rather than the road. There's just a lot of engineering changes. We have bike lanes now and different signage for all of that. Yeah, there's just a lot of changes if you want to reflect back on when you first got your driver's license, even how to get your driver's license. I got it in 6 weeks when I got mine, and now it's 3 years to get a new license. So lots has changed, and we'll just go to the next one. And you're probably also finding that everybody's going a little bit faster. Everybody has less time. The amps, they're just always in a race. And I talked a bit about those traffic patterns. Those are probably one of the biggest things that people forget. It's that if you see a change in the road, whether it's what does the green paint mean on the road, we have a responsibility as drivers to actually find out what that means, to keep ourselves learning. I always say I'm really grateful that my doctor gets brush up courses when they, to take care of us. We as drivers, there's no demand to refresh your skills throughout your whole driving career. So, but there is an accountability that we are looking into those type of things as drivers. So very different world we live in with respects to driving, and even the vehicles are changing. I mean, they've got self-parking, self-driving, electric, gas. So there's just significant changes since we first got our licenses. We are expected to understand the rules of the roads. We have great resources available to help you do that. I was hoping to have a sample book here, but it's around. I will make sure I send links to things I'm referring to. I can also send some of the Drive Smart and Tuning Up for Driver books to have at your location, so you can pick those up. If you are computer savvy, we have you can download it onto your smartphone. I myself still enjoy a book when I'm wanting to refresh my skills, so that's available. We'll provide those for free. So I'll count on Lori to remind me as we finish up. There's a few things I want to send along to help you, but we do have to understand the road. We do have to know what those changes are. We do have to learn to navigate roundabouts, and these are the resources that we have here for you. And everything is available on icbc.com, and we also have a responsibility to drive safely. So those are sort of the expectations we have as a driver. And just a touch note, Superintendent of Motor Vehicles is now called Road Safety BC, just to keep you confused. And ICBC does all the administration. So we're the ones that do the driving test, the issuing of the license. That's where you pay your fines and violations. We do the work for the superintendent of motor vehicles. They own our license and give us the privilege to drive. So they give us the directives on how we manage the administration of driver licensing. Now, the next piece is we know that driving is demanding. It takes your full focus and attention, but it also has an impact on as we age on our driving abilities. And there's sort of three main components that we consider when it comes to aging and our ability to drive safely. So obviously we look at the awareness component, which is seeing the road traffic. And I'm just going to move something here because it's right in the way. There we are. Seeing the road, the traffic conditions, that's sort of the awareness, the visual piece that we need to look at. The decision-making process is actually what are we going to do with what we've seen? How are we going to react? That whole see, think, and do piece. And then obviously the response piece is your physical ability to um, keep control of the vehicle and response to those thoughts. So you see, you think, you do. Those are the three pieces we sort of look at. What I will tell you is the typical driver makes 25 decisions in 1 kilometer. So there's a lot that has to go on when you're driving. Those decisions, am I going to stop for the pedestrian? Am I hanging right? Am I hanging left? All of these things are going on almost unconsciously as we drive. There's so many decisions being made. So when we're looking at our driving tasks and the aging process, we're going to talk about the impacts that the awareness, the decision making, the response have, and the age relating changes that start, which actually start in our 30s. I got glasses in my 30s, so that we know that it starts early. Um, the awareness piece, if we break it down a little bit, about 90% of the information input relates to our eyesight, which is an obvious one. What we do find is the range of our peripheral vision gets a little bit smaller. We start getting a little bit more of we end up getting actually larger blind spots. So we don't really see as much on the side. Many people comment, and I've really noticed it on myself in the last year or so, is that glare recovery. So when you're driving at night and it's raining and those lights come on, it's sort of you get those tracers, different things like that. That recovery, that's actually one of the biggest wins that I hear about. One thing that a lot of people aren't really aware of is the depth perception gets less accurate. So you're more of difficulty judging the distance of objects. And then all of that, your eyesight, your peripheral, your glare recovery, and your depth perception, if those are starting to go, it creates a risk, specifically in intersections, because there is more going on. You need to judge when you hang that left. Is there space for me in the car? What I can tell you is 65% of all of our crashes happen at intersections. So it's one of the probably riskiest places we travel every day. Now, when we're talking about our decision making and the decision skills, the first one is sort of interpreting the distance of oncoming traffic. It all takes memory function. Our speed response, how quickly can we go, this is what I see, and this is what I'm going to do. How fast can you process that? Am I stopping at this yellow light or is it too late? And also retrieving our memory. It's taking a little longer. I'm noticing that as well. But what happens when we don't have all the information is we start unconsciously filling in the missing information just based on the cues around us. And that can certainly put us at risk on the road. The response time, that's a little bit different. That's more your head, your neck, kind of your mobility. So when you're scanning intersections, checking for vehicles coming out of roadways, or even checking your blind spots over your shoulder, arthritis, things like that can kind of restrict that range of motion. And we were joking earlier that movement helps. Motion is the lotion, use it or lose it. Keeping your body moving will really help with some of that physical response piece. But really, ideally, your personal awareness of how age-related changes impact your driving is one of the most powerful tools to stay safe on the road. Um, so let's just see here. Let's move to the next one. So a mature driver, I just think it's more polite than calling them a senior driver. A mature driver does have the benefit of experience. I've been driving for 50 years. I've driven in Winnipeg, all these places. They've had different locations that they've driven, and they tend to have a pretty good driving record, to be honest with you, because they've been driving for so long. However, they're more vulnerable to serious injury or fatality. The less ability to withstand the injury and the recovery, healing can be slower and take longer, if at all, recovering. So there's those risk factors that come into play. All right, the self-assessment. I'm going to share a document with Lori, and if you need, I can print them and send them to you, or I can put them online. This is probably one of the best tools that I'm able to give out. It's taking a look at how am I doing, and it's sort of these series of questions that you can do with an answer key to go through and be very honest with it. What we find is that most people are like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm doing okay," or the one question is, do people still want to drive with you? Do you find other people are suggesting to drive rather than yourself? Different things like that. So it's a really great tool um, to really bring awareness to where your abilities and your driving combined. Again, really great driving records, things like that. Um, Being able to recognize trends, simple things like maybe you don't like to drive at night anymore, or you're trying to be home before dusk, because those are just changes you're making automatically, unconsciously. So that's what the self-regulate your driving. Maybe you're not comfortable driving into town until after 10 because of the amount of traffic. Most drivers as we age, we tend to self-regulate. I'm not really a big fan of going over the Malahat at night anymore. Those type of things is really saying, I don't think I'm going to do that. I'll let my husband drive. But those are the type of things that we naturally do. But having a self-assessment document to go through really will you'll benefit from that in many ways. Um, what we do find is that most drivers see themselves as safe, right? Skilled drivers. They feel that they're skilled because they've got years of experience. But what makes you even a better driver is to know how those age-related impacts your driving tasks. So what happens? They're gradual. We look at driving trends, what's changed. We take a look at things like vision. Vision's quite an obvious one because, I mean, if you're not seeing well, you're not seeing well. But when we're looking at cognitive changes, they can be more subtle and precarious. It can impair the driver's ability to actually recognize their own loss of function. And that happens in daily life as well, because the cognitive piece, if you're suffering cognitive, you may not be aware of the changes and your loved ones and family may see them. So that's one of the things we really look at is the cognitive piece. Move on. I'm not familiar with Zoom as much. Um, Road safety shows that folks who do self-assessments for an experienced driver become so much more aware of how their habits and their abilities have changed. You can actually ask your family members and your friends about your driving. Other things people tend to do is, and I talked about continuing to learn, but maybe take a driving course once in a like, if you feel like you're overwhelmed and you've got new engineering on the road, and I know out in West Shore, there's lots of new engineering going on. And maybe having that refresher course with a driving school, they can also really identify things like habits. Do you turn your steering wheel with your palm open? Super dangerous, right? You need to keep both hands on the wheel. You can cross over. Little things like that, reminding you that every time you take a right-hand turn, you've really got a shoulder check, because we have so many cycling lanes. I call it the city of spandex. There's so many cyclists out there, and those maneuvers that you could easily turn before, just need that little extra step. So we want to make sure that, but sometimes with all that experience, it's overconfidence, and we want to make sure that experienced drivers can be vulnerable to overconfidence, and that poses a safety risk. So stay teachable, keep learning, and adapt to the new driving demands. That's what we're trying to help with. All right. So sort of asking yourself a little checklist before you go out driving is sort of, how am I feeling today? What kind of medication am I taking? Will that impact? Choosing to drive when you're exhausted, feeling tired, or you're angry or stressed can be really impactful on your driving as well, because your mind is not behind the wheel. Your mind is dealing with your stressful issue or your fatigue. And again, the medication is a really important one to remember as well, is that there are many side effects, and having that relationship with your pharmacist to know, to ask if this, or if two medications cross, what kind of impact would that have on your ability to drive? So another great way is to avoid by adapting your driving habit, is to plan your errands off peak hours. Use public transit and ride with friends. That will sort of help. Peak hours are really a big issue, specifically in your community, because you have such a large population going in and out of your town, out of your communities during peak hours. And we all have been in the traffic to know what that's like. And so really planning your day differently will help actually help you manage the driving as well. Again, we've talked about driving at night, and I put reduced distractions because of the cell phones. We are finding that the cell phone use isn't one specific age group. It has all the demographics. I've been out on many police enforcement deployments, and there's just no one typical type of driver that's doing it. They all are. Well, the percentage that do it are all types. So I do still suggest reducing distractions, even if it's the radio. Children in your car are a brutal distraction. As a mom, I remember just like, oh, I just turn the radio and keep on driving because the noise in the back, it was really distracting. But anything that we can do to reduce those distractions. All right. We're going to assess driver fitness. So what happens at about 80 years of age, class 5. And when I talk about a class 5 license, that's your everyday passenger license. Higher class license, 4, 3, 2, and 1 are like for commercial vehicles. They have a different standard for assessing. Well, they have the same standard, but more frequency for assessing the driver's fitness. And what driver fitness is essentially is the health status as it relates to driving. So cognitive, motor skills, and visual function. So let's see if I missed anything. And what happens, who assesses driver fitness? I talked about Road Safety BC, the superintendent of motor vehicle. They're the ones responsible by law to assess drivers and ensure that they are medically fit to drive safely. And at the end of the day, they make the final decision. If you are being asked to prove your driving ability, through ICBC on their behalf, they will make the final decision whether someone is safe to drive or not. It's not ICBC. We gather the information and we pass it to them for their final decision. So they make this decision on an individual basis. So I know with a regular class 5, around 80 years old, you can get a letter that requests you to get a medical. You go to your doctor, that medical comes back, and pertaining to what's in that medical, that will trigger either a request for enhanced road assessment. So it's not a road test, it's an assessment of your driving ability. So it's a little bit different than should you be a new driver and having to go through an entire, hour-long road test. They request the commercial drivers. Some of them have to do them annually or after so many years. It's people who are identified that they have a medical condition that impacts their driving could be called in for this assessment. And again, drivers over 80, and then depending on what information and where they're at, because it's all individually based, they may have to come back every 2 years. They may be good. It may be every 5. It just depends because everybody's unique, right? So when a driver is healthy, the decision is conclusive from the medical report. So if they receive a medical report and everything's great, you're not going to be asked to prove your driver record. So just because you receive a letter that says you need to do a medical report, it depends what's on there, and it also depends on a number of other factors. Maybe we'll get into that in a sec. So just because you get that medical report does not mean you're going to have to do an assessment. It depends on it. We do about 4,500 assessments annually, which is not a lot when you think of how many people there are. A little bit more on, so if you do submit your medical report, then they will take a look at, they may ask for a little bit more or have a specialist, depending on what your medical conditions are. They may ask you to do an ICBC Road assessment. So, they get that from your driving record. They'll take a look at your crash history and different things like that. I'm going to go over some of the medical impairments that kind of affect your driving, just so that you can kind of get a perspective on sort of what they're looking for. So, when you're looking at types of medical impairments, things like strokes, amputated limbs, very poor vision, or medicine that you take to control whatever your medical condition is, like I said, but may affect your driving. So that, can impact your driving on various degrees. Um, so there are actually 3 medical impairments that may impact a person's ability to drive, and I'll talk about those here. As you can see, cognitive, so that's the decline in your mental process. That is the ability to think, see, do. So see what's going on, how am I going to handle it, and what's my physical reaction? Am I slamming on the brakes? Am I hitting the gas? What does that do? So this can occur through all regions of our brain, resulting in different sort of declines across the board. It can impact your vision, sort of visual dependent skills, the ability to alternate between tasks. So dividing your attention. So I'm trying to navigate where I'm going, but I'm watching this. I've got a pedestrian here. Sort of those multitask sort of decision makings. And it can also affect your planning skills. What am I going to do next? Here, where are we going? Now, the cognitive impairment can result from a medical illness, Alzheimer's diseases, or stroke, but also physical trauma. So this isn't just a mature driver assessment. If somebody has a brain injury at 16 years old, they may be required to do an assessment on a regular basis because they have a brain injury. So it's not age related. The other thing is, a lot of times with cognitive impairment, and I said this earlier, these individuals lack the awareness or the insight of their own cognitive changes. So that's why we really lean on friends and family as we age to sort of check in on how we're driving. The second piece is the physical impairment. As we age, changes happen very gradually to our physical abilities. They may result from a fall or an injury, medical conditions, sort of stroke, diabetes, arthritis, or just a decline in the body's functioning, motor functioning. So that's your mobility, your dexterity, and your stamina. So, I have an example of that from a stroke. You can get hemiplegia, which is sort of the weakness of the right or the left side, and that has a huge impact on your ability to drive or physically use the controls, whether that's trying to reach to hit the gas or the brake. It can affect your mobility, your dexterity, and your stamina. Another one is a good example, which is more common, is if you have a vascular deficit from diabetes, which can impact amputation. Maybe you need special controls to motorize that vehicle and different equipment. We want you to keep resume driving, of course. And the last one's sensory. So this is particular to the decline in your sensory functions. So hearing, vision, touch. An example of this would be cataracts. We know that happens to us, and then we can no longer see as well as we did before, and that really impacts the vehicle driving and the environment you're in. Another one, again, the diabetes, they can affect the sensation in your feet, and that results in the lack of reliability, that your feet will do what you want them to do, therefore hitting the gas instead of the brake, which can happen. So that can also happen from a cognitive impact. So it's that see, think, do, and not react the way we'd hoped. Due to age-related illnesses, cognitive, physical, and sensory impairment are often present in older adults and can that negatively impact their driving. So it is more in the mature population. However, it can be for all ages due to their medical health and well-being. All right. So the outcome of an assessment could be anything from, yeah, you're doing great, carry on. Or maybe it's like, you're doing okay, but we're going to give you a learner's license because of you almost crashed on the assessment, or you may have got a violation. Sometimes they could say, we need a little bit more information. And then there's times where it's like, I'm sorry, it's time to retire from driving. Um, I'm sorry if you can hear that loud noise. There's a tow truck right outside my door taking a crashed car away. And sometimes it's not safe to drive. So um, there's a lot of consultation that goes on with that. But we want to make sure that we have safe drivers on the road. All right, I'm just going to get a little bit more. Like I said, about 4,500 people across British Columbia are asked to prove their driving ability just to keep their driver's license. There is a number of reasons why you would be asked to do this. That could be anything from your driving record, the medical report that was submitted, even letters. Your physician, your hospital, or rehabilitation may have sent a letter to Road Safety BC in concerns of someone's driving ability. Um, Again, some of the existing medical stuff that's already identified, a letter from a relative or an employer, and that's probably one of the most difficult ones. I do get people called very concerned about family members. They go by and they go visit and they take a look at their family member's car and it's got bumps and lots of little nicks and cracks and crashes, and you can driving by feel or something. So sometimes that really concerns because pedestrians are super vulnerable out there, and even though there's small little scratches and nicks, it could hit a pedestrian if that's what's going on. So we want to make sure that. And then the unsolicited, police may attend a crash scene and identify maybe this driver might need to be assessed. And also court and Crown Counsel can recommend that. So that's sort of how it may be flagged. The other piece, so if you do get one, you need to go to read that letter really carefully, read it thoroughly, maybe have someone else give it a little read as well, schedule your appointment. You're there for 90 minutes, but let me assure you, you're not driving for 90 minutes. We pack in a lot of time to ensure that you're comfortable, to ensure that this is going to be as less stress as we can make it, because it's stressful whether you're a new driver or an old driver. The ICBC driving guides, I'm going to share them with you, and I will send those to you. One thing that's really great is we have a practice knowledge test online. So you can, and I'll send links to that too. You can go on there and you can practice your road signs. We're going to go over some of those driving tips that are sort of downfalls, but we can do online knowledge tests, online road tests, anonymous. You can go through them all the time. The young students that in the high schools, they're in at 14, 15, they're going on and reading it because they're really excited to get their license. It's a great tool. You don't put any personal information in. You could just go in and refresh. It's an alternative to the book. And then when you find the new information, practice those skills. It's super important. So that's sort of preparation. This piece, the preparation and the practicing the new driving, should be for anybody at any age to brush up on. It's talked about at this point because someone's going to be assessed. But really, I would rather people have this information before crisis hits, before you need to go and have an assessment, before you feel overwhelmed that you may not have the ability. You want to be doing all of this practicing and reviewing ahead of the game, ahead of the curve, so you are prepared and you are improving your skills. We get you to bring your vehicle, and we also get you to bring a family or friend all up in that conversation. Having that other person really can help hear the message, make notes, and do whatever. Also, if the test is unsuccessful, you have a way home. Which is not all the time. If you or someone has assistive devices, you use oxygen or what have you, or you have to use a special device because of other medical conditions, make sure you have those. Anytime you come to ICBC, you always bring your 2 pieces of ID, and we don't charge for this. This isn't we're asking you to come prove your driving ability. We're not going to charge you for this. All the new drivers and all those tests that they take, they pay. All right. When you go, they're going to bring you in. They're going to explain to you exactly what's going on. They're going to ask you to go over your controls. They're going to check your headlights, make sure you can do your hazards, make sure you can do your windshield, your defrost, your brakes. They want to make sure that you still have all the functioning components to utilize those tools when we drive. So it's really important that they're all working and that you bring a vehicle that is roadworthy. What they look at when they're doing this, it's a two-part test. So you go out for 20 minutes, you come back, the driver examiner will explain maybe you blew all the stop signs or you're just rolling through stop signs. He said, "What I want you to make sure you're doing a full stop at a stop sign," as an example. Then you can actually go back out on the road for another 20 minutes, and you have an opportunity to improve those things because we understand habits form over the years and good or bad. And so we'll give you the opportunity to try again. And the type of things they're looking at is making sure that you can turn safely at intersections. I really will warn anyone who does go, they're done out of the Mackenzie Driver Licensing Office. They've been there for decades. That road has changed significantly. Borden Street, if you're in there and you pull out of the Borden Street parking lot, you turn left and you're going to hang where the Monkey Tree Pub is. They have a two-way bike lane that turns left right off the Cedar Hill Road there onto Borden. They don't have to stop, but all the cars have to stop. You turn left on Borden, you go down as if you're going to Mackenzie, you're going to hang a right. You cannot turn right on that red anymore. There are 3 large signs because of the two-way bike lanes. Two-way bike lanes on Fort, Pandora, you're seeing them everywhere. So really, intersections have changed. So making sure that you're aware of those. I always warn people about the Mackenzie one because unfortunately some people just blow right through that stop sign. So we want to give you as much information to be successful. We're also going to put you through different areas of different speeds. So you'll go through school zones, you'll go through parks, pardon me, playground zones, and you'll not necessarily go on the highway. It depends what community you live in, but here in Saanich, I don't believe they do that. They'll get you to do a parking maneuver. That may just be backing into a parking lot, pulling into a parking lot, adjusting your safety controls, which is your signals. And they're going to ask, and this is the one that kind of gets people a little concerned, is a task that includes multiple steps. So they may say, turn right, turn on your windshield wipers, and then turn them off. They may ask something like that so that they can see that you can put your mind and do a maneuver while doing basic safe driving and kind of keeping those two together. You'll come back, you'll have a chat, and then you'll go back out and do similar types of moves. The one that people hear about and get concerned is sort of a multiple set direction. So again, that's like the windshield wipers or turning to honk your horn and do this. The second one is the reverse route. They'll take you and say you're going to hang a right, a left, and a left. So you do that, then you turn around and you have to drive back right, right, left. Very simple, very well informed. You can ask them questions, say, can you say that again? And they can tell you up to 3 times. They may ask you to say it back just to make sure you understand what they're saying. This piece, it addresses sort of the short-term memory loss piece so that you can retrace a route. So you should be able to divide your attention between following the designated route and maintaining your basic driving skills. This test has a little bit raised of the cognitive piece because that has such an impact, just to make sure, similar to what's out there, the workload you have when you're driving around, but they're definitely making sure that those types of steps are successful. They're going to observe a couple of things while you drive. They're going to observe your speed, your steering. So some of the steering, like the old school, people will grab their hand and turn left like this. Back when we had my first car, I had no power steering. You really had to crank that wheel. A lot of people still do that. It's a more of a dangerous thing. If you had a collision and your airbag went off, right into your own face. It's in a broken hand. It's a really, those airbags, we got to keep our hands on the steering wheel out to the side. You're going to be asked to observe and what hazard perception. Hazard is I'm coming up to an intersection, there's students getting out of school, there's a bus stop. Those are type of hazards you're looking for. There's some dogs, the light's changing yellow, different things that a driver looks and goes, okay, I need to be aware of that. They're also going to talk a little bit about right of way. So do you know your right of way and where are you positioned on the road? Sometimes people like squeak really close to the side or they squeak a little close to the center line. Maybe they're straddling the bike lanes. It's sort of taking a look where you are on that. Now, they'll really want you to make complete stops. I can't express that enough. We'll talk a little bit about that. They're going to be looking for those shoulder checks. And when you're shoulder checking, you're actually looking in the back seat if you had a back seat through that window. I sometimes get a neck problem, so I actually tend to lean forward and twist in the lower torso because I can get a deeper look back. Any kind of lateral move you make with the car. So that's whether you're changing lanes or you're hanging a right or a left. The driver examiner will observe, make notes. They do a scoring, but the success has nothing to do with the scoring. It's just identifying a few things along the way, different demerits. When you come back, um, let's see. When you come back, they're going to talk about what it is. And that's when you want to bring your family or friend to come and listen to the feedback, because feedback can be difficult to receive. And so you want them there for the debrief. It's not decided on that day at that time. All that information is then taken directly and sent to Road Safety BC, and then they are the ones that will do the assessment. They'll take a look at your driving history. They'll take a look at everything, the totality of your driving history. And from that, they make the assessment, your medical report, your enhanced road assessment, your crash history, your driving history. There's a lot more that just goes in than just that enhanced road. But if there is a unsafe maneuver on the road test, you may leave with the learners until you're advised to come back. That's sort of, I always get that piece out of the way because it's the mystery of everybody being concerned to be brought in for a road test. So it's done in a way that can keep you as comfortable as you can because it can be stressful. I'm going to go over like the majority of tips right now that will be able to sort of give you an idea of different things that we're seeing on the road. One of the things that we see is people driving either really slow, doing 20K, which is just as risky as going. Well, the faster you go, if there's pedestrians on the road and you go fast, that's very, very risky. But it is impeding traffic can cause other types of collisions. For example, signs and school zones. We'll talk about this. This is a school zone sign. Most people would say, well, I need to do 30 kilometers. This is actually a warning sign. And you would do whatever the posted speed limit is. So I believe in your area, it's not Hans Helgeson, it's the Montessori school. I believe they just have one of these signs. So you remain at 50K if that's the posted speed limit. You don't drop your speed unless you have one of those black and white regulatory signs. That has to be attached to the sign for a speed adjustment. When an officer is writing a ticket, they don't write tickets against a yellow warning sign. They write tickets against the black and white regulatory signs. So that is where you would do that. And here is an example of a school zone. That red car on the bottom, you must be doing 30K before you cross that line, before you cross that sign. You travel all the way until you see the back side of the other sign. Then you can go back to your posted speed limit. Some communities are actually putting end of school zone signs, but we have so many municipalities and they all engineer and have budgets. So not everybody, it's not consistent, but I was really glad to see that they were starting to do that. The next sign down on the bottom left is a playground sign. Again, this is just a warning sign. It's to let you know you don't drop till 30K unless that black and white sign is on there. And most drivers aren't aware of this. Our graduated licensing students are learning this, our new learners. However, those who got their license in 6 weeks, like I did, this is something that most people don't know. So if you're going down Mackenzie and there's St. Andrew's School, everybody's doing 50, getting ready to go to 60 as you cross the underpass at Mackenzie. And there's people cranking on the brakes to go to 30. If you've got a commercial truck coming by, he's doing 50, ready to go up to 60, and you've now dropped. It can cause a huge problem. So this is a really important piece. And I talked about practicing the signs online. This will help you be aware of that. So I will send a link on signs to help you out for sure. Oh, one last comment. The bottom two, those are in effect 7 days a week, dawn to dusk, where you can see on the top, it's 8 to 5 on school days for school zones. So some school zones actually are, the engineers will post them on playground because the kids are there on the weekends. It's better to actually have that. You get a longer stretch of slower traffic in that area. I talked about stop signs, rolling stops. The biggest complaint I hear about this is you see the second road on the left here. It has the single bar across. Most people say that bar's too far back. I can't see. Well, they get you to stop. You do your full stop at that bar, and then you creep forward. The reason that bar is set so far back is because pedestrians and cyclists walk in that pathway. If you pulled right up, you could cause a conflict. So that stop bar is a little farther back. So you do your full stop. And I always say when you do a full stop, you feel your body tilt like that when your vehicle does a full stop. Then you can creep out, look left and right, clear your sidelines, and make your turn. The same when you're looking at pedestrians. We want to make sure we stop for all of them. Once they clear your laneway, you can carry on. Stopping for no reason. So if you're being, you're someone's talking, you slow right down. It's a form of distraction. We really want to make sure there's no stopping for no reason, and we do see that out there when the mind. It's again those two tasks: what I'm thinking about and maintaining my driving. Left foot braking. This is a good one. There is a generation that actually will use right foot gas, left foot brake. It's not the safest way to do it. You need that left foot to plant on the floor to stabilize the driver, and the right foot should be operating both pedals. Having said that, if you are a left foot braker and you go for an assessment, they're going to, I think it's called grandfather, that they're going to not expect someone at 80 years old to change from driving with both feet to one foot. But moving forward, a new driver, they wouldn't be permitted to do so. Left-hand turns, probably most dangerous maneuver we do on the road. So here we look at this screen and we have a quick kind of keep an eye on time. Yeah, I'm almost done here. You see those three vehicles. The safest position in the intersection when someone's turning left is the vehicle in the yellow. So the light is green, the yellow vehicle is signaling, but this green one, then it's in front, many dangerous things going on there. The wheels are turned rather than being straight. So if this person were rear-ended, he would go right into oncoming traffic and potentially hit the cyclist. One vehicle in the intersection at a time, and the car in the very rear white one, it remains there till that yellow car clears the intersection and then they go in. We're always seeing piggybackers, especially, in those major intersections where they'll jump in and like 4 cars will go through. Problem with that is they might not see that cyclist on the corner or those pedestrians because that blue car is blocking it. So those are the things we've really got to be really careful. We talked about blind spots. This is sort of what they call a blind spot. Those kind of identify them. Yes, we can use our mirrors. But you need to use your mirrors, and you can use your turning. If you're backing up and you're checking your blind spots, a lot of people talk about the cameras. That's just another tool to help. You need to still be using your mirrors, shoulder checking, and then I use my backup camera to make sure I don't bump into the fence or if I'm backing in. Scanning intersections is probably the safest thing you do. You look, and then you look again. A lot of more people are on transit and on bikes. It's the world we live in. It's really expensive to drive a car, insure a car, and the gas. So you're seeing a lot more, I call them vulnerable road users because they're vulnerable to the risk out there. So scanning those intersections and taking a look. There's lots of work being done to protect those pedestrians. They're getting the signal to walk out sooner so that they're more in your sight line when you're hanging that left. There's lots of work, but the intersection is probably the most overwhelming place for as we drive. I'm going to jump on a couple here and just quickly talk about some roundabouts, just so we have time for questions. 2 types of roundabouts. These ones on the left are your traffic circles. They've had them on Pete Road. They have them in many communities in the West Shore. And you just yield to the person in the intersection. So, but when you get a little more crazy, come on out to McTavish and give a try of those multi ones. What we do is I always say signal on your exit. So that car coming in knows what's going on. I like to signal all the way through. If I'm hanging on the left, I'm going to keep that left signal on. But ideally, as long as you're signaling when you exit, that will keep the flow of it going. If you have to take an extra lap around it, I did that 3 times when I tried McTavish for the first time. It takes a little bit. What we really need to be watching for are those pedestrians who come out, because you're coming around the bend, you're watching, you're coming out of that exit, and you've got that pedestrian right there. So
Pauline, can I ask a question about
yeah.
the exiting and signaling? I'm not sure which signal light to use sometimes if I'm just going straight through around from?
So let's say you are the blue car in the left picture. I would be signaling left because they're going to go all the way around. Once you're ready to exit, you exit right. All of them exit right. So I hit left to say I'm going all the way around, and then when I'm ready to exit, I flick my right on to show that I'm exiting. So it's because in England we'd be left, but here right, right out, right signal out, just so that car that's coming in knows if you're coming off the circle or not. We're putting together a really cool fact sheet on roundabouts. It'll be out hopefully in the new year, and I can add that to the things that get sent to you. I'll send it out to you after. You're going to see more and more roundabouts. They are absolutely a lot more safer than full signaled intersections, and we do a lot of work. We've supported roundabouts from before I was even in road safety, so quite a few years. All right. The planning to stay mobile component, we're at our last piece. What we do know is that in the Journal of American Geriatric Society, they've estimated that the average older adult will outlive at least 7-10 years beyond their ability to drive. We're healthier, we're living longer. However, that's sort of beyond some of our ability to drive. So we really need to be proactive in our planning. We need to stay mobile and plan for lifestyles that use safe means of transportation. And I know resource centers, Lori, like yours, have lots of different ways for seniors who may not be able to drive anymore to sort of get some of those things. I'm 4 years out from retiring. I have put a lot of work into my retirement. I'm ready to get moving, but a lot of people do, and they have this great time. But did they plan to retire from driving? Because sometimes they forget about that component. If you live in a very remote place and then now you no longer drive, how do you get to your appointments, and how do you get your groceries and things like that? The pandemic helped us with respect that everything's at a click and can be delivered now, which is one positive thing. However, it's the social piece, the shut-in component. We want to make sure that you're still getting that personal contact. So you need to really approach the planning for retirement and driving as part of that overall plan. Knowing what the other alternate transportation is. What is it? Buses? Is it handy dart? What's available to you, and really knowing what's available and how you're going to get these resources to you or get to them. So that really has to come into play when we're looking at retiring. And we want to plan it before we're forced, or we may lose our privilege to drive. So you don't want to have to worry with that at that point. There's lots of ways to stay out there. Public transit, BC Transit's really improved over the years. There's lots more transportation available. There's volunteer driver programs. I don't know if that exists out there, but there are seniors driving seniors. There's public, and there's also private companies that can do that as well. Other alternatives, we see a lot of people go to the electric scooters, the ones that they can sit in. You are considered a pedestrian. They're not to be in the bike lane, but that's a great way to get around if you no longer have the ability. And I see lots of folks with their flags, highly reflective, doing a great job to still be out in their community. There's taxi services here in Victoria. There's also a taxi voucher program. I'm not sure if you've had experience on that, but BC Transit provides taxi savers. So you only pay for 50% of the taxi and ride, and it's a great program. Not mine, so I'm not selling it very well, but there certainly is a great program for that. Delivery services, Handy Dart. There's a lot of different ways, and also just the community, like in the senior center, and building those networks like you do already, and knowing who would be a help to drive and things like that. Staying connected with those sort of community pieces to help still keep you mobile, because we don't want people to be alone in their homes and not able to get out. If you do come to the terms that it's time to retire from driving, sometimes it's giving up that ID. A lot of people don't want to give that up. Fortunately, if you surrender your license, you will get a free BC ID, which is the same quality and security that a British Columbia driver's license has, and those come free. You can get your BC service cards and things like that. So you will have ID if you choose, because I know that a lot of times it's giving up the actual card that can be sometimes difficult. I'm going to jump there and open it up to questions before we run out of time. I knew I run over. I always do. I don't know if you want to unmute your crowd, and if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to field them.
Thanks, Colleen. Maybe I'll get you to turn off your, so there we go.
Here we are.
I'll just put on the gallery screen. Is there anybody there who has a question? If you need help unmuting, I can help you with that too.
It's a lot of information.
It's
like, I
really
always say
good information.
I'm like, it's like drinking from a fire hose. There's so much to it. We will send out a lot of information after this, and you can have links, and then sometimes you have a chat or you can do the assessment. And if you have any questions, you can certainly, my information is available. You can certainly just reach out to me privately. It's a real personal thing when it comes to you know, your driving and our health and medical abilities to drive.
Shirley, did you have a question?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, my husband doesn't have a license now, and he had one of those ID cards that you were just showing, and he lost it. So he got another and he lost it. And so they haven't been photographing people at ICBC.
Can you say that again? I missed that. They don't have what?
They didn't have the ability to photograph him during the pandemic. There were no appointments for being photographed. So when we go like for flu shots or the vaccines, I had to take his passport because it was the only ID program he had. Are they doing this now?
Absolutely, yes, they are. You can go to if Souk is closer to you, there's a driver services out in Souk or Wharf Street or Mackenzie Drive in this community. They're throughout all, but you have 3 locations here, and 4 actually. There's one in Sydney, and the Souk one is actually open all day on Saturdays, which is new.
Okay.
But yeah, they definitely are. We've a lot of those restrictions were pulled back. It was a challenging time, so thanks for being patient through that.
Okay. Yeah. No, I've enjoyed this very much because I did just as before the pandemic started, I took driving lessons. You know, I took
Oh yeah, good.
Just to get somebody to look at me and tell me about my tendencies. And but then we had the pandemic, so I haven't been driving a lot. But I am driving, and I'm mostly around in Machosin and doing most of the things you said, like going out not at rush hour and so on and so forth. Yeah. So I look forward. You're going to send the book.
Yep, I'll send some books. I'll send a link to it. Everything I spoke to is all available on ICBC.com, but I will send links. I'll send books. I'll send printed copies of the assessment. So when the next time you're in the center, you can grab that.
Okay.
Sounds surely like you're doing all the right things. I think that's great. That's what's going to give you a longer driving, we call it driving career.
And when I get those materials, I'll reach out to all of you to let you know when I have them, the hard copies and stuff posted online.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just writing down the things I need to send you. Knowledge, sign.
I have a list here. So
Oh, wonderful. Okay, well, we'll chat after then.
Yeah. Anybody else have any questions? We have a few minutes left.
Thank you very much. You covered a lot of territory, and it's good to know what the steps are in the process. Thank you.
Yeah, it sort of demystifies it because, someone will say something and they may just have it a little bit twisted and it causes angst and it shouldn't. We want safe drivers on the road for as long as they can drive. So knowing that that's where we're coming from, it's not a driver examiner's great day to take someone's license. It's a really hard day for them too. So if you can get this information earlier before you are asked to come in for an assessment, or if you are, it's better to have this information. I think we should be looking at this in our 60s, really just brushing up. I mean, especially with the changes to the roads, there's so much going on out there, and the school zones, although which they're very well highlighted out there. I don't know if you guys seen yellow poles, the paint on the road. They're doing a lot of work in the school zones, and we actually help support that. We spend about $1 million a year on engineering improvements with local road authorities. Done lots of work. Langford's done tons of work. We've supported a number of things. We do a lot of work with crosswalks, the amber flashing lights and things like that. I'm in your schools all the time. We do everything. We're trying to kind of make sure we contact people throughout their driving career, and this is one of my favorite ones. So I enjoy great audiences that really want the information.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Colleen. That was
You're
so
most welcome.
informative. And thanks to everybody who joined us today. I just want to let you know our next event is on November 22nd, our next Zoom event, and that's on preventing falls and injuries, because falls are the number one thing that will have you having to leave your home.
Yeah.
So tell your family and friends and come again. And it's all posted on our website, machosenseniors.ca. And there's also a survey after, and it's in the chat box, or it should pop open when the Zoom call ends, if you want to provide us with any feedback.
Okay.
So thanks, everybody, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks, Colleen.
Thank you for having me. It was a true pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.